Yes, Lindsay's. I'm so happy.
Well, she seems super lovely and normal. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, your home for independent commentary and analysis on politics, media, internet culture, and more. We've got a little bit of a dark story to touch on this morning, this Sunday. I did get a haircut finally, and my partner is home to do my hair, so hopefully y'all can stop roasting me to high heavens for my hair and how rough it's been looking the last couple days. But anyway, we're going to talk about the passing of Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina and the fallout from it, really, because people are very much dancing on his grave, celebrating his death, taking joy in it. And I am generally not a proponent in that of that approach to human life and death, really, regardless of the politics or how destructive the legacy of a given individual may be. I don't particularly support that approach to people dying and passing, but it's pretty widespread, and I think it's important to talk about. First, here's a clip from CNN breaking down the news about about his passing and telling us a little bit more about Lindsey Graham's life, including a few aspects that people might not know. Let's watch.
We're learning that longtime Republican Senator Lindsey Graham has passed away. His office says he died on Saturday night after what they call a brief and sudden illness. The statement says Graham's family is asking for privacy at this time. He represented the state of South Carolina in the U.S. Congress since 1995. Let's bring in CNN's Alex Michelson, anchor of The Story Is. Alex, you are on the West Coast there. How are you processing this news that has just come in, the shocking death of a senator who had just been in Ukraine and had just met with the Ukrainian president, and now we're learning he has died?
Yeah, I mean, just posted a bunch of statements onto X yesterday in his official capacity. Pictures and images of him working over the last few weeks are out there. So this coming out of nowhere, that Lindsey Graham, one of the most important and influential voices in the United States Senate for many years, somebody who has been one of the biggest champions of more United States military intervention, somebody who has championed the idea of military intervention in Iran for many years, somebody who's championed the United States relationship with Israel very closely for many years. And now all of a sudden, you know, there's been so much conversation about Mitch McConnell's medical reality right now. Nobody would have thought this would come now.
So there's a lot to unpack about this, and I'll kind of give my big picture thoughts. Then we're going to look at some unhinged videos and some pretty out there tweets as well, making fun of his death or celebrating it or cheering it. First, when it comes to Lindsey Graham, I think there's obviously things about his life that people might not know that are admirable or are, you know, something worthy of positive reflection. Both his parents died young. He adopted and took care of his sister. He served in the military as a JAG. During his time in Congress and in the Senate, he worked on bipartisan criminal justice reform, bipartisan immigration reform, lots of substantive, thoughtful work. But I don't think it's unfair or inappropriate to point out that his overwhelming legacy will be his enthusiastic support for wars abroad and military conflicts that cost millions of lives cumulatively. And many of those were obviously civilians. There was enormous cost to the U.S. Treasury, to the U.S. taxpayer, and he was pretty unrepentant in support for most of that and continued to advocate for that till, you know, the very end. And I think criticizing someone's legacy or what they stood for as a politician is fair game. Ultimately, they're still a human being, though, and celebrating the death of someone, especially an ideological or political opponent, will never feel right to me. And I will always come back to the idea of, well, you don't have to all suddenly pretend they were amazing and sing their praises and wax poetic about what a wonderful statesman they were. I'll always come back to the idea that, guys, sometimes if you don't have anything nice to say about someone, saying nothing is an option. It's, in fact, a pretty good option in some of these instances. And There's a reason, like our moms would tell us that as kids. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all, because it's actually a decent rule of thumb. You don't really gain anything by taking delight in another human's suffering or dancing publicly on someone else's grave. All that you really can do is perhaps bring a little bit more suffering to their loved ones. And then I think debase yourself slightly and erode slightly your own humanity and drag yourself down into the mud. There's definitely been people who've been killed or who have died who I don't have anything nice to say and frankly am not going to shed a tear for. But to take that next step and dance on their grave publicly or try to take some joy in the loss of their life, to me feels wrong. I'm not trying to cancel anybody or get them fired if they say something offensive about Lindsey Graham, but I don't support that approach in our politics. And I just think the high road still exists and more people should choose to take it. But I'm going to show you one video that is going viral of your typical kind of liberal crazy white lady on TikTok celebrating Lindsey Graham's death. Let's watch that. Then we'll get into some tweets from some very well-known pundits and analysts as well. But first, here's that video.
Yes, Lindsay's he's good. Who's going to Disneyland with me tomorrow? I'm so happy.
Oh, she seems stable. If you know this woman in real life, run. There's just something about that. Like I said, you don't have to pretend you loved Lindsey Graham or that he was an amazing person or that you think he was a force for good in the world. You can absolutely be critical of his legacy and the things he advocated for and how harmful many of them were to the world. But to take that step and act giddy over another human dying is gross. It just comes off as evil, and it comes off as you being in an emotionally dark place yourself. Like you are, to some extent, dragging yourself down into the mud of human emotion by letting yourself take joy in another person's suffering. And sometimes people do well, he was happy about all the suffering of these kids in Gaza or whatever. And even if you accept that as true, I imagine, him or people that agree with him would dispute it. But even if you accept that at face value, I don't believe in the idea that two wrongs make a right, or that just because your opponents act in a way that is callous or immoral, that justifies you doing the same thing. And I don't even think in self-interested terms it's the best way to approach this stuff, because I think it takes you somewhere dark, inside your own soul, to be giddy about another human dying, about someone else who, it appears that he had some sort of, cardiac issue or heart attack. And he did, there's already conspiracy theories. I kind of doubt them. I think the most likely explanation is probably just at face value that the 71-year-old with a long history of blood pressure issues had some sort of sudden cardiac issue. Apparently his father also died at age 69 from cardiac arrest. So it's like, listen, never say never, but until there's some reason to think something other than the incredibly obvious thing happened, I won't be donning my tinfoil hat and going Candace Owens. But I want to also go, there's a couple posts as well from the left-wing commentator and co-host of The Young Turks, Anna Kasparian, who you guys know, I like her personally. I've agreed with her on some things in the past, but she is going viral for her pretty in-your-face commentary about Lindsey Graham's passing. So she tweeted right when this news was breaking, "Good riddance, period." That has 3 million views. She then followed it up with this post and said, "Are you offended? ? Let me clarify. I'm elated that he's dead. Overjoyed. Just like he was elated at seeing countless dead children throughout the Middle East." So here's why I don't share this sentiment on a couple of levels. One, I go back to, if you don't have anything nice to say, you can always just not say anything about someone dying. You don't have to pretend. I don't believe you have to, like, everyone just don't speak ill of the dead and just praise them and act like they were wonderful and rosy. And look, I'm certainly not trying to cancel Anna or get her fired or anything like that because of what she said, but I do find it dark I really do, that you would be overjoyed in the death of another human. Because you're essentially engaging in the same thing you're accusing Lindsey Graham of doing, which is, callous indifference to human life or even taking joy in death, rather than saying, like, we're going to be better than him. We're going to take the high road. And we are and that's just taking at face value all the assertions. I'm sure, like Lindsey Graham would have said that he doesn't. I mean, he did speak with very callous disregard for the loss of civilian life in the Middle East, but I'm sure he would have disputed the idea that he took joy in civilian deaths and casualties. But even at face value, it's like two wrongs don't make a right. And if you are seeing someone die and feeling, oh, not me banging the own microphone, and feeling overjoyed, I just think that's sad. I think that's you're giving them too much power over you, and you're letting hate take over inside of you. And that's human, but it's also one of our darker impulses. And I just don't really think it's a healthy or productive way to engage in political discourse, especially when people are multifaceted, they're complicated. And I think you could be very critical of his legacy, and I'm not going to clutch my pearls, right? If Anna Kasparian wanted to put a thread about all the harm and destruction that Lindsey Graham and the things he supported caused in the Middle East, I think that'd be fair game, especially in the modern era of politics where, we're really not doing the, oh, you have to just play nice when someone dies totally thing. Okay, fair enough. But to actually take that one step further and take joy in it and take delight in it, the same way when people took joy in the death of Charlie Kirk, or when Trump celebrated the death of Rob Reiner and or at least mocked it or belittled it, and actually openly celebrated the death of Robert Mueller. I condemn that. I find all of it gross. I think death is like probably the single most sombering aspect of human existence. And I believe that human life has intrinsic value. And I think that I really do believe that there's something dark about lowering yourself into the mud and taking joy in the death of another human being at the very same time their loved ones are weeping. And I would just humbly suggest that we could make, and I know it's not going to, stir up a drama on Twitter, but we could actually make a return to this idea that we learned as kids and our parents taught us, that if you don't have anything nice to say, you could say nothing, or you could at very least focus on substantive attacks that don't entail taking delight in human suffering and human death. I don't know. There's been people who've passed away who I think their deaths are well justified and will have no tears for. But at the same time, being happy about the flame of someone's soul being extinguished is just something I think that you have to guard against. Because once you start feeling that way, it takes you down this path towards dehumanization and towards hatred of others that I think poisons discourse and takes people to very dark places where ultimately they can either support or some even engage in acts of violence themselves. And I don't support it. It's not the way that I wish to approach these issues or handle these issues. And so I feel compelled to say so, because that is overwhelmingly dominating the discourse at the moment. I will say there is a little bit of hypocrisy here. So, for example, Brian Kresenstein, who's like a Democratic Twitter troll, tweeted, "Lindsey Graham just died. Good. I'm glad he's dead. He can no longer hurt innocent people!" ! And I think obviously that is a gross thing to tweet. Like I said, I think it is gross to celebrate another person's death and be happy about someone passing. But I also instantly recognized what he was doing there. He took verbatim Trump's tweet about Robert Mueller's death, the longtime federal law enforcement official who led an investigation into President Trump during his first term, and he just swapped out Mueller for Lindsey Graham. And then you have all these tweets, like this guy dunking on him. The left are absolute total pieces of shit, all of them, because of what Brian tweeted. And it's like, if you don't see what he's doing there, and if you didn't have the same energy, I don't support what he's doing, but there are a fair number of people who get absolutely outraged when people on the left celebrate the death of a Republican, be it Lindsey Graham or Charlie Kirk or what have you, but either totally ignore or suddenly go silent or make excuses for President Trump, who has repeatedly engaged in taking delight in the death of his foes and enemies. So I would just humbly suggest that people should try to be consistent on this, and always remember that not hitting send on the tweet is also an option. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. Do hit the like button to show your support for the channel and for my commentary. And the other best way to do that is by becoming a channel member here on YouTube by hitting the join button or the link in the pinned comment to support my content. And it's really the best way. If you just constantly have the most extreme or acerbic take, or you pander to one side, you can blow up on YouTube and get millions of subscribers and millions of dollars. But I don't do that, so it does help me to have support from viewers like you. So if you're able to, do become a channel member. And I also do videos. I'll be dropping one tomorrow, I believe, actually, where I answer questions and comments from members as well. So if you have feedback or pushback or questions for me you want to hear me address on air, go ahead and become a channel member, then drop them down below. With that, guys, that'll be it for this video, and we'll talk again real soon.